Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where humanity clings to survival across a million worlds, there exists a force so secret that most Imperial citizens live and die without ever knowing of its existence. They are the Grey Knights, the demon hunters, the incorruptible warriors who stand between mankind and the horrors that lurk beyond the veil of reality. They are clad in silver armor that gleams like starlight, even in the deepest darkness, and they wield weapons that can cut through the fabric of the warp itself. But just how strong are these legendary warriors? What makes them different from the countless other Space Marine chapters that defend the Imperium? And why, despite numbering fewer than 1,000 souls across the entire galaxy, are they considered one of humanity's most potent weapons? These are questions that deserve answers, and the answers themselves are as complex and fascinating as the Grey Knights themselves. For these are no ordinary Space Marines, no mere transhuman warriors enhanced beyond mortal limits. Every single Grey Knight is a psyker, blessed and cursed with the ability to touch the immaterium, that roiling sea of souls and emotions that underlies all of reality. Every single Grey Knight carries within them gene seed descended not from one of the Emperor's 20 Primarchs, but from the master of mankind himself. And every single Grey Knight has been trained, conditioned, and psychologically reinforced to such a degree that in over 10,000 years of service, not one has ever fallen to the corruption of chaos. Think about that for a moment. In a galaxy where even the mightiest champions can be corrupted, where entire Space Marine legions turn traitor during the Horus Heresy, where even Primarchs themselves succumb to the whispers of the Dark Gods, the Grey Knights stand unblemished. They fight in the very heart of demonic incursions. They banish entities whose mere presence can shatter the minds of lesser beings, and they wade through corruption that would turn ordinary men into gibbering madness within heartbeats. Yet they remain pure, their souls as untainted as the silver of their armor. But purity alone does not make one strong. The galaxy is filled with faithful servants of the Emperor who perish by the billions in service to the Imperium. What sets the Grey Knights apart is not merely their resistance to corruption, but the sheer concentrated power that each individual warrior represents. When a Grey Knight enters battle, reality itself seems to bend around them. The air crackles with psychic energy as they channel the power of the warp through carefully honed disciplines. Their weapons blaze with psychic fire that can unmake the very essence of a demon. Their armor, etched with countless protective wards, and blessed 1,000 times over, turns aside blows that would shatter ceramite. These warriors teleport directly into the heart of enemy formations, appearing in flashes of silver light to bring the Emperor's judgment to those who would tear open the veil between worlds. They strike with precision, with overwhelming force, and with a coordination born from psychic communion that allows them to act as one organism rather than individual soldiers. Or when a strike force of Grey Knights deploys, even the most powerful servants of chaos take notice, for they know that these are the Emperor's ultimate answer to demonic incursion. Yet for all their power, the Grey Knights are also defined by their scarcity. With fewer than 1,000 battle brothers spread across the entire galaxy, they cannot be everywhere at once. They cannot fight in every war, cannot defend every world, cannot answer every desperate call for aid. They are a surgical instrument rather than a blunt weapon, deployed only when the demonic threat is so severe that nothing else will suffice. This rarity makes every Grey Knight precious beyond measure, and every loss a tragedy that reverberates through the chapter for generations. So as we delve deeper into the nature of these demon hunters, as we explore their origins, their capabilities, their greatest victories, and their inherent limitations, keep in mind that we are examining one of the most concentrated expressions of the Emperor's will in the entire Imperium. The Grey Knights are not the largest force, not the most numerous, not even the most widely known. But when it comes to fighting the horrors that emerge from the warp, When it comes to banishing the entities that should not exist in reality, when it comes to holding the line against corruption that can reshape worlds, they may very well be humanity's greatest weapon. This is their story. This is the measure of their strength. This is everything you need to know about just how powerful the Grey Knights truly are. The tale of the Grey Knights begins in the darkest days of the Horus Heresy, when the Imperium of man teetered on the brink of annihilation. Brother fought brother across 1,000 worlds, and the very fabric of reality seemed ready to tear apart as chaos poured through cracks in the Materium. The Emperor of mankind, locked in a desperate war for humanity's survival, could see the shape of things to come. With his prescient vision, he understood that even if the heresy were won, even if Horus and his traitor legions were defeated, the cost would be catastrophic. He foresaw his own incapacitation, foresaw that he would be unable to actively defend mankind from the predations of chaos and its demonic servants. And so, in secret, the Emperor set in motion a plan that would outlive his active involvement in the Imperium's defense. He entrusted this sacred task to his closest advisor and most loyal servant, Malcador the Sigillite, a man whose psychic might was second only to the Emperor himself. Malcador was given a mission of utmost importance and absolute secrecy. He was to scour the Imperium for individuals worthy of becoming the foundation of a new force, one that would specialize in fighting the demonic, one that would be incorruptible even in the face of chaos itself. Malcador found 12 worthy champions to begin this great work. 4 were lords and administrators, men of wisdom and authority, who could help shape the political and organizational structure of what was to come. 8 were space marines, drawn from both loyalist and traitor legions. For what mattered was not where they came from, but the purity of their hearts and the strength of their souls. Among these 8 were names that would become legend, though their identities would be hidden even from history itself. The survivors of the Eisenstein incident were among the first to be recruited. Nathaniel Garrow, the Death Guard captain who had remained loyal even as his legion fell to corruption, brought with him an understanding of what they were fighting against that few others could match. Others joined this sacred band, men like Tylos Rubio, Mesa Varon, and the mysterious warrior known only as Janus, who would go on to become the first supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights. Some of these warriors came from legions that had turned traitor, yet they themselves had remained true to the Emperor. This was a deliberate choice. For Malcador and the Emperor understood that those who had stared into the abyss of chaos and resisted its call possessed a strength of character beyond ordinary measure. These were not simply loyal warriors, but tested souls who had proven their incorruptibility in the crucible of the heresy itself. Shortly before the Siege of Terra, Malcador gathered the original 8 warriors who would become the first Grey Knights. The Emperor himself surveyed these chosen recruits, and finding them worthy, granted his approval and consent to proceed. What happened next defied understanding even by the standards of that tumultuous age. Malcador transported these 8 warriors to Saturn's moon Titan, where a fortress monastery already stood fully prepared, as if it had been waiting for them since time immemorial. How this fortress came to be, or who built it, and when it was constructed remain mysteries to this day. What is known is that it contained everything necessary to forge a new chapter of Space Marines. Vast stockpiles of weapons and armor lay ready for use. Gene seed waited in stasis, gene seed that according to legend was taken directly from the Emperor himself, rather than from any of his Primarch sons. And most remarkably, the fortress was already populated by hundreds upon hundreds of suitable recruits, gathered from across the galaxy. Some were raw and untrained, plucked from feral worlds and populations, untouched by the Imperium's standard tithe. Others had been selected in secret from the ranks of loyalist legions, chosen for their psychic potential and their strength of character. But Titan's greatest defense was yet to come. As the fires of the Horus heresy reached their peak, as Horus himself led his forces toward Terra In a final apocalyptic confrontation, Malkador performed what may have been his greatest feat of psychic power. He hid Titan not behind shields or in some distant corner of the galaxy, but in the most improbable and dangerous place imaginable. He hid it in the warp itself, that realm of madness and chaos where demons dwell and sanity holds no meaning. The moon of Titan, along with its fortress and all who dwelt within, was placed beyond the reach of both sides in the Great Civil War. Time itself flowed differently in the warp, and what seemed like a brief sojourn to the outside universe became decades of training and preparation for those on Titan. When the moon finally emerged from its hiding place after the heresy had concluded, Shazit returned not with 8 warriors and their raw recruits, but with a full chapter of 1,000 battle brothers, fully trained and ready for war. The second founding was taking place across the Imperium as the old legions were broken down into smaller chapters. The newly formed Inquisition, led by the same lords Malkador had selected years before, secretly included the Grey Knights in this great reorganization. They designated this new chapter as Chapter 666, despite there being barely 400 chapters commissioned at the time. This number was both a mark of honor and a grim joke, for 666 was a number associated with imperfection and evil in ancient human lore. Yet these warriors would be the most perfect defenders against evil the Imperium had ever produced. And unlike any other chapter created during the second founding, the Grey Knights were embedded within the Inquisition itself. They became the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the demon-hunting branch of the Inquisition. Where other chapters fought Xenos, heretics, and traitors, the Grey Knights would have one singular purpose that transcended all others. They would fight demons and only demons, would specialize in banishing the entities of the warp, and would carry humanity's war against chaos into realms where mortal men could not hope to survive. Before departing to his fate at the Emperor's side during the final confrontation with Horus, Malkador appointed Janus as the first Supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights. Janus, whose identity before joining the 8 founding warriors remains one of the chapter's greatest secrets, took up the mantle of leadership and has been venerated by the chapter ever since. Some whisper that Janus was actually one of the lost Primarchs, preserved in secret for this ultimate purpose. Others claim he was simply the greatest of the 8. The truth, like so much about the Grey Knights, remains hidden in shadow and secrecy. The gene seed that would be implanted into generation after generation of Grey Knight recruits was said to have come directly from the Emperor himself. This was no mere symbolic claim or metaphor. Unlike every other chapter of Space Marines, whose gene seed can be traced back to one of the 20 Primarchs, the Grey Knights carry the Emperor's own genetic legacy within their enhanced bodies. This is what they call the Emperor's gift. As an outsiders who hear this term often think it merely poetic language or spiritual symbolism. But for the Grey Knights, it is literal truth. They are the sons of the Emperor in a way that no other Space Marines can claim. This unique heritage grants the Grey Knights capabilities beyond those of ordinary Astartes. Every single Grey Knight is a psyker of considerable power, for the Emperor's gene seed awakens and enhances psychic potential that might otherwise remain dormant. Where other chapters must carefully manage and contain the handful of psykers in their ranks, every Grey Knight is trained in the psychic arts from the moment they enter the chapter's halls. This universal psychic ability is what allows them to fight demons on even footing, to channel the same warp energies that give their enemies form and power. Since their founding during those desperate days at the end of the heresy, the Grey Knights have maintained an unbroken vigil against the demonic. For over 10,000 years, they have fought in the shadows, their very existence unknown to most of the Imperium they defend. Their victories are celebrated only by those who witness them, and those witnesses are often mind-wiped or executed to preserve the chapter's secrecy. Their defeats are mourned only by their brothers, recorded in halls that outsiders will never see. They are the Emperor's own demon hunters, forged in the final days of his active rule, and they remain true to that purpose even in this darkest age. On Saturn's largest moon, hidden in the shadow of the ringed gas giant, stands the fortress monastery of the Grey Knights. Titan itself is a world of harsh beauty, and dominated by vast cryovolcanoes that breathe liquid ammonia and nitrogen into the thin atmosphere, where these exhalations freeze into crystal structures that catch the distant light of the sun like scattered diamonds. The low gravity allows these frozen jets to reach tremendous heights before falling back to the moon's surface in slow cascades of ice. Beneath this toxic atmosphere, beneath the freezing surface, the basalt fortress of the Grey Knights rises like a blackened fang from the methane seas. This fortress, known as the Citadel of Titan, is carved entirely from dark grey basalt that seems to drink in light rather than reflect it. It is a place of such imposing presence that even approaching it fills the soul with a sense of awe and dread. The structure is massive enough to house over 1,000 space marines and all their weapons of war. Yet most of the time, it stands largely empty and silent, for the nature of the Grey Knight's mission means that the majority of the chapter is scattered across the galaxy at any given time, fighting demonic incursions on distant worlds. Within the fortress hang pennants, banners, and flags commemorating victories and sacrifices that span 10 millennia of warfare against the demonic. Each banner represents a campaign, a battle, a world saved from corruption or consigned to flame when salvation proved impossible. But none save the Grey Knights themselves would recognize the names inscribed in faded golden lettering on these ancient standards. The campaigns fought by the Grey Knights are erased from Imperial records, yet the worlds they defend often scoured of all memory of the demonic taint, and the very fact of their intervention concealed even from those they save. The fortress operates in absolute secrecy that goes beyond even the normal paranoia of the Imperium. The location of Titan itself is known only to the Ordo Malleus, and even among the Inquisition, only the highest-ranking members are permitted to visit. The chapter is answerable to no one save the Emperor himself and the Inquisition's demon-hunting branch. Even the High Lords of Terror, who nominally command the military might of the Imperium, have no authority over the Grey Knights. They are a law unto themselves, granted autonomy so complete that some might consider it dangerous if their purity and dedication were not beyond question. Titan is surrounded by Saturn's magnificent rings and by several other moons that have been claimed by the Ordo Malleus for their own purposes. Mimas serves as a prison and execution center, where those who learn too much about chaos, or the Grey Knights themselves, are sent for final judgment. Enceladus houses the leaders of the Ordo Malleus and the most influential inquisitors of the demon-hunting order. These nearby moons form a defensive network around Titan, ensuring that no unwanted visitors can approach the Grey Knight's home. The defenses of Titan are formidable beyond measure. Vast arrays of defense fleets patrol the space around Saturn. Interceptors stand ready to launch at a moment's notice. Ground-based weaponry of incredible power is distributed across the moon's surface. It is said that only Terra itself, yet the cradle of humanity and seat of the Imperium, Mars with its Forge World defenses, and Cadia, which stood as the gate against chaos for millennia, boasted more formidable fortifications than Titan. The Grey Knights take no chances with the security of their home, for within its walls lie secrets that could shake the foundations of the Imperium if revealed. Deep within the fortress lies the Librarium Demonica, the Imperium's most complete repository of knowledge about the warp and its denizens. This is a forbidden place filled with tens of thousands of ancient tomes containing diabolic lore that the Ordo Malleus has accumulated over the millennia. To enter the Librarium Demonica is to risk one's very soul, for the knowledge contained within could corrupt the unwary or drive the unprepared mad, and only the most experienced and pure Grey Knights librarians are permitted to study these texts, and even they do so under the strictest protocols and psychic safeguards. Here are recorded the true names of demons, the rituals for their banishment, the signs and portents that herald their arrival, and the weaknesses that allow mortal warriors to fight entities born of pure warp energy. This knowledge is power in the most literal sense, for knowing a demon's true name grants power over it, allows a Grey Knight to unmake its essence, and send it screaming back into the warp. The librarium is both the chapter's greatest weapon and its greatest danger, a double-edged blade that must be wielded with utmost care. Beneath the fortress, in cool damp crypts, lies the dead fields where the Grey Knights inter their fallen brothers. And it is here that every Grey Knight wishes to find their final rest, in these hallowed halls alongside warriors who have given their lives in service to the Emperor and humanity. Almost every member of the chapter will have their body recovered, no matter how distant the battlefield or how difficult the retrieval, and brought to these crypts beneath the temple of the Emperor on Titan. As a final tribute, the names of the dead are carved ceremoniously into a great basalt wall in the heart of the fortress. Among these names are some of the Imperium's greatest heroes, warriors who died in the most heroic circumstances imaginable against foes that history will never record. They remain almost completely unknown to the wider galaxy, their deeds unsung, save in the private remembrances of their chapter. But this is the price of the Grey Knight's secrecy, that even in death they cannot receive the glory that might be their due. Yet they accept this willingly, for glory was never their purpose. Duty is all, and duty demands secrecy. One of the most important structures within the fortress is the Augurium, a massive black spire topped with a silver pinnacle that seems to pierce the very sky of Titan. This is where the chapter's prognosticars, gifted psychers, who specialize in divination and foresight, peer into the currents of the warp to detect demonic incursions before they occur. They view countless possible timelines, watching the ebb and flow of warp energies across the galaxy, searching for the telltale signs that herald a demonic invasion. Through their efforts, the Grey Knights can often arrive to counter a demonic incursion before it fully manifests, striking at the enemy in their moment of weakness rather than after they have established a foothold in reality. The Chamber of Trials is where prospective Grey Knights undergo their brutal training regimen. The sounds of combat and psychic exercises echo constantly through these halls as recruits are pushed to their absolute limits and beyond. Many do not survive this training, their bodies or minds breaking under the strain of becoming something more than human. But those who do emerge as weapons, perfectly crafted to fight the demonic threat. Hidden deep within the fortress is the Warp Nexus, an ancient device of unknown origin that possesses the power to push the entire moon of Titan out of phase with reality and hide it within the warp. And this device was used once before during the Horus Heresy, when Malkador concealed Titan from the eyes of Horus and his traitor forces. But no one currently alive fully understands how it works, and the very thought of activating it again fills even the bravest Grey Knights with trepidation. To deliberately enter the warp with an entire moon and its population would be an act of desperation beyond measure. The Cloister of Sorrows is a chamber open to the night sky of Titan, its atmosphere contained by an electromagnetic shield that allows a Grey Knight to stand alone with their thoughts while gazing into the stars. Here, warriors come to contemplate their duty, to find peace before battle, or to mourn brothers lost in distant wars. It is a place of quiet reflection in a fortress dedicated to endless war. Our Fallen Dagger Hall is named after Grand Master Colgano, who centuries ago challenged the Grey Knights under his command to an unarmored dagger duel, with the winner receiving his jewel-encrusted Terminator armor. The hall now serves as a place for close combat training and occasionally for meetings with visiting inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus. The Mandulian Chapel is a long gallery named after Grand Master Mandulius, who died 1,000 years ago. Its high ceiling is supported by thick columns decorated with statues of imperial heroes, representing the different organizations that keep the Imperium together. At the end of the chapel stands a huge 3-paneled altar, and at the front is an ornate statue of Mandulius himself, frozen in bronze in a pose of eternal vigilance. Such is the expanse of some areas of the citadel that not even the Grand Masters of the Grey Knights know the full extent of the tunnels beneath Mount Anarch, the mountain into which much of the fortress is carved. Rumors abound of ancient chambers sealed since before the Imperium's founding, of an Eldar webway gate whose wards barely contain some primordial evil, of things that lurk in the deep places that make even the mountain itself shudder. These tremors have grown more frequent since the formation of the Great Rift that now splits the galaxy in two, suggesting that whatever sleeps beneath Titan is responding to the increased warp turbulence. At least one Grey Knight's Grand Master, typically the Grand Master of the Sixth Brotherhood, who holds the title of High Seneschal of the Citadel of Titan, and is always present at the fortress to oversee its operations and defense. But for the most part, Titan stands as a monument to absence, a massive fortress holding the memory of warriors who are always away fighting humanity's hidden war against demonic incursion. The Grey Knights are organized in a manner quite different from most Codex-adherent Space Marine chapters, where other chapters are divided into 10 companies. The Grey Knights are split into 8 brotherhoods, plus the specialized orders of purifiers and paladins. Each brotherhood is roughly equivalent to a company in size, consisting of approximately 100 battle brothers, though the exact numbers can fluctuate based on current campaigns and recruitment success. Each brotherhood is overseen by a Grand Master who serves as both a military commander and a member of the chapter's ruling council. These 8 Grand Masters, along with the Supreme Grand Master, who leads the entire chapter, form the leadership that guides the Grey Knights' strategic deployments across the galaxy. But unlike other chapters, where companies might spend years or even decades fighting together in large formations, the nature of the Grey Knights' mission means that most of their strength is scattered across the Imperium at any given time. The First Brotherhood, known as the Swordbearers, maintains and administers the chapter's armory. When the Grey Knights require armored or aerial support, it is typically the First Brotherhood that provides it. Their Grand Master is the master of the arsenal, responsible for ensuring that every Grey Knight has access to the finest weapons and equipment that the Imperium can provide. The Second Brotherhood, the Blades of Victory, specializes in rapid deployment and swift strikes. They make extensive use of interceptor squads equipped with personal teleporters and strike squads trained for immediate combat effectiveness. Using mass teleportation tactics, they outmaneuver their foes and create beachheads for heavier troops to follow. The Second Brotherhood is often in the vanguard of Grey Knights' assaults, their Grand Master serving as Admiral of the Grey Knights' fleet and excelling in the art of strategic maneuver and deployment. The Third Brotherhood, the Wardmakers, carries a special legacy. According to legend, this was the brotherhood of Janus himself, the first Supreme Grand Master. As such, the Third has fostered many of the chapter's greatest heroes over the millennia. Kaldor Drygo, the current Supreme Grand Master, came from the Third Brotherhood, as did other legendary figures. The Grand Master of the Third holds the title of Warden of the Librarius, having authority over the Librarium Demonica and the chapter's librarians. The Fourth Brotherhood, the Prescient Brethren, specializes in divination and foresight. They work closely with the prognosticars in the Augurium to predict where demonic incursions will occur and strike preemptively. Their ability to anticipate enemy movements makes them devastating in tactical engagements. The Fifth Brotherhood, known as the Preservers, is responsible for training the chapter's apothecaries and overseeing the management and preservation of the precious gene seed. Their Grand Master serves as Chief Apothecary and holds the title Protector of the Sanctum Sanctorum. The Fifth also manages the chapter's dreadnoughts, those rare Grey Knights who are interred in walking sarcophagi rather than being laid to rest in the dead fields. The Sixth Brotherhood, the Rapiers, are known as stringent taskmasters and strategic thinkers. Their Grand Master, the High Seneschal of the Citadel of Titan, is tasked with crafting the most elite and deadly strike forces for crucial missions. Rather than relying on mass firepower, the Sixth Brotherhood employs surgical strikes of small elite squads. When greater numbers are required, they deploy mindless servitors to bog down the enemy, while the Grey Knights themselves focus on high-value targets. The Seventh Brotherhood, the Exactors, have a long history of operating alongside the Ordo Malleus. Certain respected inquisitors may call upon the Seventh Brotherhood by name, having forged bonds of trust through centuries of cooperation. This brotherhood serves as the primary link between the chapter and the wider Inquisition. The Eighth Brotherhood, the Silver Blades, is charged with recruiting and training new Grey Knights. However, upon completion of their training, a warrior may choose to remain within the Eighth, and many do exactly that. The Eighth is known for fighting in fluid configurations, changing tactics swiftly during combat, and utilizing any available weapon without preference. The Master of the Eighth acts as the Master of Recruits for the entire chapter. Beyond these 8 brotherhoods exist 2 other fighting organizations within the chapter. The Order of Purifiers consists of Grey Knights, considered even more incorruptible than their already pure brothers. These warriors have faced the worst that chaos can offer and emerged without even the faintest taint. They are led by the Brotherhood Champion and field specialist weapons, like incinerators that can burn demonic essence with purifying flame. The Paladins represent the chapter's most elite warriors, veterans of countless campaigns who have proven themselves in battle after battle. They operate from the Hall of Champions and serve as an honor guard for Grand Masters, or as independent strike forces when only the very best will suffice. Paladins are equipped with the finest weapons and armor the chapter possesses and are entrusted with relics of immense power. Most of the chapter's strength is spread throughout the Imperium at any given time, ensuring that the fighting skills of the Grey Knights can be quickly called upon by the Ordo Malleus wherever a demonic incursion may occur. These small forces are often deployed thousands of light years from their fortress monastery for years or even decades at a time. They are usually organized into small teams that have trained and fought together for their entire lives, developing a psychic rapport that allows them to act with perfect coordination. When a summons comes from an inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, when a world faces demonic invasion, when the veil between realities grows thin and the warp threatens to spill into the Imperium, the nearest Grey Knight strike force responds with all haste. Or they may arrive as a single squad of 5 warriors, as a Terminator assault force of 10 veterans, or in the rarest and most desperate circumstances.
You know, I have to pause here for a moment because this is something that genuinely fascinates me about the Grey Knights. When you really think about it, they represent this beautiful contradiction in the Warhammer universe. They're these incredibly powerful warriors, yet they're tragically few in number. They've never had a single battle brother fall to corruption in 10,000 years, which is absolutely insane when you consider that even Primarchs fell during the Horus Heresy. It's this perfect blend of hope and tragedy that makes their lore so compelling to me. They're proof that purity and incorruptibility are possible in this universe. But at the same time, they're so stretched thin that countless worlds fall simply because they can't be everywhere at once. Tension is what makes them such a fascinating faction to study. But anyways, let's continue the video.
As a full brotherhood of 100 battle brothers. The size of the force deployed depends on the severity of the threat, but even a handful of Grey Knights can turn the tide of battle against demonic foes. This dispersed deployment means that the Grey Knights are constantly engaged in warfare across the galaxy. There is no rest, no pause in their eternal vigil. When one mission ends, another begins. When one daemon is banished, another must be hunted. The chapter's small numbers mean that each warrior is precious, but it also means that they must be deployed with surgical precision rather than thrown into battles they might win through sheer numbers. But becoming a Grey Knight is perhaps the most difficult challenge any aspirant can face in the entire Imperium. The mortality rate for recruits is staggering, far higher than even the already brutal selection process for ordinary Space Marines. Where a typical chapter might see 1 in 100 aspirants survive to become full battle brothers, the Grey Knight's standards are even more exacting. They seek not just physical strength, not just mental resilience, but psychic potential of the highest order combined with absolute purity of soul. The recruitment process is overseen by the Company of Gatherers, specialist Grey Knights who set out from the Chamber of Trials to search for potential aspirants across the galaxy. These gatherers have drawn recruits from the League of Black Ships, as where untrained psychers are transported to Terra to serve the Imperium in various capacities. They seek out psychically gifted individuals on worlds beyond Imperial rule. They travel to feral worlds considered off-limits to all other Imperial citizens, searching for savage youths whose psychic talent burns bright and pure. Some recruits are drawn from the recruiting pools of other Space Marine chapters, often without permission or notification. A young aspirant training to become an Ultramarine might find himself mysteriously transported to Titan if the gatherers detect the requisite psychic potential. Other chapters might protest this practice, but the Ordo Malleus has decreed that the Grey Knight's need supersedes all other concerns. The fight against demonic incursion is too important to allow bureaucratic obstacles to stand in the way. The only absolute criteria the gatherers adhere to are that all recruits must possess psychic talent of significant strength and must demonstrate exceptional physical and mental fortitude. These two requirements are non-negotiable. A recruit who lacks psychic ability cannot become a Grey Knight, for the chapter's methods of warfare depend absolutely on every warrior being able to channel warp energies. Similarly, a recruit who lacks the strength of character to resist corruption, no matter how gifted psychically, represents an unacceptable risk. Once brought to Titan, recruits are put through trials that make the training regimen of other Space Marine chapters seem almost gentle by comparison. The Grey Knights must be certain, absolutely certain, that every warrior who emerges from training will never fall to corruption. A single corrupted Grey Knight would be catastrophic, for such a warrior would possess intimate knowledge of the chapter's methods, would know the true names used to banish demons, would understand the defensive measures that protect Titan itself. Therefore, the training is designed not just to build strength and skill, but to test the very soul of each recruit. During training, each Grey Knight recruit is designated by a number rather than a name. They are stripped of their previous identity, their birth name, their family connections, everything that defined who they were before. This serves multiple purposes. It symbolizes being reborn into a new existence, shedding the mortal self to become something greater. But it also protects recruits, for the training they undergo is so intense, so traumatic, that they are unlikely to remember their past lives anyway. Better to consciously abandon that former self than to have it ripped away by the rigors of transformation. The physical transformation from baseline human to Space Marine is painful and dangerous for all chapters, but the Grey Knights add additional implants and procedures that amplify psychic potential. The gene seed derived from the Emperor himself must be carefully integrated with the recruit's body. Each organ implanted brings new capabilities and new challenges. The recruit must not only survive the biological changes, but must maintain control of their psychic abilities throughout the process. But an uncontrolled psychic surge during surgery could kill the aspirant and everyone around them. Simultaneously with physical transformation, the recruits undergo intensive psychic training. They learn to perceive the warp, to channel its energies safely, to build mental defenses that can withstand demonic assault. They study the nature of chaos, not to be tempted by it, but to understand how to fight it. They memorize the true names of demons, learn the rituals of banishment, practice the psychic disciplines that will define their combat effectiveness. The training also includes extensive martial practice. Every Grey Knight must master combat in all its forms, from ranged warfare with stormbolters and psycannons to close quarters fighting with nemesis force weapons. They train in power armor and in the heavier Terminator plate. They learn to teleport precisely into combat, to coordinate with their brothers through psychic communion, to maintain absolute discipline even when facing horrors that would shatter ordinary minds. Perhaps most importantly, recruits are subjected to controlled exposure to corruption. They are shown the whispers of chaos, the false promises, the seductive lies that the dark gods offer to mortals. This is incredibly dangerous, for even the briefest exposure to chaos can corrupt the unwary. But the Grey Knights believe that only by facing temptation and consciously rejecting it can a warrior be truly trusted to resist corruption in actual combat. Those who waver, who show even the slightest susceptibility to chaos, are immediately terminated. There can be no second chances, no mercy for those who might be weak. Only upon completion of this brutal training regimen are the survivors given new names. These names are not chosen at random or based on personal preference. Each Grey Knight name is actually a fragment of magical lore that acts in perfect opposition to the true name of a particular daemon. The name itself is a weapon, binding the warrior to a specific counter-demon purpose. When a Grey Knight speaks his own name in battle, he is invoking power that can help unmake his designated foe. This means that even introducing oneself becomes a form of warfare for a Grey Knight. Their very identity is weaponized against the demonic, and should a Grey Knight fall in battle, his name passes to another, ensuring that the demon he was created to counter will always have an opposing force ready to banish it. The mortality rate for recruits is appalling by any standard. Perhaps 1 in 1,000 aspirants survives to become a full Grey Knight. Some die during the physical transformation, their bodies rejecting the gene seed or failing to integrate the enhanced organs. Others perish during psychic training, their minds unable to withstand exposure to the warp. Still others are executed when they show susceptibility to corruption, or when their psychic abilities prove uncontrollable and dangerous. This attrition means that the chapter struggles to maintain its numbers. With fewer than 1,000 Grey Knights active at any given time, and constant casualties from their dangerous missions, recruitment must be ongoing and relentless. The company of gatherers never rests. They're always searching for those rare individuals who possess both the psychic gift and the strength of soul necessary to become demon hunters. Yet despite these losses, despite the seemingly impossible standards, the Grey Knights maintain their vigil. Each warrior who survives training becomes a living weapon precisely calibrated to fight demonic entities. They are worth the cost, worth the countless dead aspirants and the resources expended on their creation, because they can accomplish what no other warriors in the Imperium can achieve. They can face greater demons and survive. They can wade through corruption that would annihilate lesser beings. They can hold the line against the worst that the warp can unleash upon reality. When a Grey Knight finally completes his training and receives his name, when he dons his silver armor for the first time and takes up his nemesis weapon, he does so with the absolute certainty that he will never fall to chaos. 10,000 years of chapter history support this certainty. Not once has a Grey Knight turned traitor. Not once has corruption claimed one of their number. They are the Emperor's own perfected weapons against the demonic, and they will remain so until the last stars burn out and the galaxy falls to darkness. The weapons and equipment used by the Grey Knights represent the pinnacle of what the Imperium can create when resources are no object and purpose is clear. Every piece of war gear carried by a Grey Knight is specifically designed and blessed to fight demonic entities. That from the smallest purity seal to the massive nemesis dreadknights that tower over the battlefield like walking fortresses. At the heart of every Grey Knight's arsenal is the nemesis force weapon, a blade unlike any other in the Imperium. These weapons are individually crafted for each warrior, attuned specifically to their unique psychic signature through a process that takes months to complete. The weapon becomes an extension of the wielder's soul, a channel through which psychic energy can be focused and directed with devastating precision. Nemesis weapons come in many forms, each suited to different combat styles and tactical situations. The Nemesis Force Sword is perhaps the most common, a blade of perfect balance that can parry enemy strikes while delivering killing blows enhanced by psychic energy. What the Nemesis Force Halberd offers additional reach, allowing a Grey Knight to strike opponents before they can close to dangerous proximity, the extended haft crackling with barely contained power. The Nemesis Demon Hammer trades speed for overwhelming force, each blow capable of crushing armor and shattering bone while simultaneously disrupting the warp essence of demonic foes. Rarer variants include the Nemesis falchions, paired shorter blades that allow a Grey Knight to strike with incredible speed, weaving a pattern of destruction that few enemies can defend against. The Nemesis warding stave serves a more defensive role, its length allowing the wielder to channel psychic might into protective refractor fields that can soften incoming blows and turn aside attacks that would otherwise prove fatal. Each Nemesis weapon contains a psi matrix, a psychic circuitry of incredible complexity that amplifies and focuses the wielder's power. When a Grey Knight channels his psychic might through the weapon, it blazes with silver fire that can cut through the very fabric of reality. Demons struck by these blessed blades do not merely die, but are unmade, their essence torn apart and cast back into the warp in a manner that causes them agony beyond mortal comprehension. The weapon's power grows with the warrior who wields it. A young Grey Knight fresh from training can channel sufficient energy to make his Nemesis blade cut through armor that would turn aside normal weapons. A veteran of 100 battles can make his weapon shine like a star, its edge sharp enough to slice through the thickest armor with contemptuous ease. And the greatest heroes of the chapter, warriors like Kaldor Drygo with his legendary Titanzord, can make their weapons blaze with such fury that reality itself seems to bend around them. Complementing their melee capabilities, Grey Knights carry a variety of ranged weapons specifically designed to harm demonic entities. Every Grey Knight is equipped with a wrist-mounted storm bolter integrated directly into their armor. This allows them to maintain constant fire even while wielding a two-handed weapon, the storm bolter's blessed rounds punching through armor and demonic flesh with equal effectiveness. But the signature ranged weapons of the Grey Knights are the Psi Cannon and the Silencer, instruments of destruction that have no equivalent in other chapters, as the Psi Cannon is a psychically augmented weapon that fires rounds imbued with warp energy. These projectiles can tear through the thickest armor and are especially effective against demonic targets, whose essence can be disrupted by the weapon's psychic resonance. The distinctive sound of a Psi Cannon firing has become synonymous with Grey Knight's intervention, a harsh crack that signals doom for the enemies of mankind. The Silencer is even more esoteric, a weapon purported to be of Xenos origin, though heavily modified for use by the Grey Knights. It uses the condensed psychic might of its wielder to destabilize the demonic core of an enemy, essentially attacking the warp stuff that gives demons form. Against mortal targets, the Silencer is merely effective. Against demons, it is devastatingly lethal, at each hit unraveling the binding that keeps them manifested in reality. The armor worn by Grey Knights is itself a marvel of artifice and faith combined. Unlike other chapters whose armor is painted in chapter colors, Grey Knight armor is left unpainted, the natural silver grey of specially blessed ceramite exposed for all to see. This tradition originated from their desire to lead lives of absolute purity, the unblemished metal serving as a physical representation of their incorruptible souls. But this armor is far more than mere ceramite plates. Every suit of Grey Knight armor is an Aegis suit, laced with a psychic matrix that helps protect the wearer against warp-spawned sorcery and the reality-warping powers of demonic entities. Acid etched into the left gauntlet and tattooed upon the flesh beneath, is the sigil of Malcador, the Sigillite, a ward of protection and a mark of the chapter's origins. The armor's surface is covered with countless protective symbols, litanies of banishment engraved in microscopic text, and purity seals blessed by the chapter's chaplains. These are not mere decorations, but functional magical defenses, each symbol providing protection against specific forms of corruption and psychic attack. The cumulative effect of these thousands of wards makes Grey Knight armor nearly impervious to the reality-bending powers that demons employ as easily as breathing. Terminator armor worn by veteran Grey Knights represents an even higher level of protection and capability. These suits of tactical dreadnought armor are rare and precious, each one a masterwork that takes decades to construct. They allow Grey Knights to wade through fire that would melt ordinary armor, to shrug off blows that would kill lesser warriors, and to teleport with even greater precision than their power-armored brothers. The chapter also makes use of specialized weapons suited to particular tactical situations. Incinerators project blessed promethium that burns with purifying fire, especially effective against hordes of lesser demons or corrupted mortals. Silencers and psycannons can be mounted on various platforms, from the personal weapons carried by individual warriors to the heavy versions mounted on vehicles and dreadnoughts. Each weapon is blessed, each round consecrated, each piece of equipment treated with the reverence due to holy relics. Perhaps the most distinctive piece of wargear unique to the Grey Knights is the Nemesis Dreadknight, a massive walking suit designed specifically to combat greater demons in single combat. These towering constructs are piloted by a single Grey Knight who stands at the heart of the machine, his movements controlling the Dreadknight's massive armored limbs. Unlike traditional dreadnoughts, where the pilot is encased within an armored sarcophagus, Dreadknight pilots retain full mobility and awareness while gaining the strength and durability needed to fight the largest servants of chaos. Dreadknights can be equipped with heavy weapons, including Gatling silencers that can pour out a storm of psychic destruction, heavy psycannons that combine psychic disruption with overwhelming firepower, and massive Nemesis doom fists that can crush demon princes and greater demons with contemptuous ease. And some Dreadknights are fitted with personal teleporters, allowing them to appear directly in the path of charging daemon hordes, while others carry Nemesis greatswords as tall as a man that can cleave through the thickest armor. When a Grand Master pilots a Nemesis Dreadknight, the machine becomes even more formidable. The Grand Master's superior skill, combined with his Iron Halo force field generator and his centuries of combat experience, transforms the Dreadknight into an unstoppable engine of destruction. These Grandmaster Dreadknights have faced demon primarchs in combat and emerged victorious, their massive frames bearing the scars of battles that would be sung about for millennia if only their existence was not so secret. The chapter maintains its own forge world, Deimos, which hangs in orbit over Titan, as this forge is dedicated entirely to producing and maintaining equipment for the Grey Knights. The tech priests of Deimos have forged pacts with the chapter that go back to the founding, agreements that ensure the Grey Knights always have access to the finest weapons and armor the Mechanicus can produce. In return, the Grey Knights provide the tech priests with rare opportunities to study warp phenomena under controlled conditions and grant them access to archaeotech recovered from demonic incursions. Every piece of equipment, every weapon, every suit of armor produced on Deimos undergoes extensive blessing and consecration before it is deemed worthy of use by a Grey Knight. Chaplains chant litanies of protection over weapons as they are forged. Librarians inscribe wards onto armor plates with psychic energy. The tech priests themselves perform rites of sanctification that combine the Mechanicus's reverence for the machine's spirit with specific anti-demon protocols developed over 10 millennia. This attention to detail, this insistence on perfection in every piece of wargear, ensures that when a Grey Knight goes into battle, they carry with them the accumulated expertise of an entire chapter dedicated to one purpose. Their weapons are not just tools, but extensions of their will, blessed instruments of the Emperor's judgment. To witness a Grey Knight wielding their full arsenal in combat is to see warfare elevated to an art form. The flash of silver armor as they teleport into battle, the crackling discharge of psycannons, the blazing arcs carved through reality by Nemesis weapons, as all combine to create a spectacle of destruction that is both beautiful and terrifying to behold. Every Grey Knight is a psyker, and this universal psychic ability fundamentally defines how they wage war. Where other Space Marine chapters might have 1 or 2 librarians per company, each capable of wielding warp-spawned powers but constrained by rarity and the danger of the gift, the Grey Knights operate on an entirely different paradigm. A full strike force of Grey Knights represents dozens of powerful psykers working in perfect concert, their abilities synchronized through psychic communion to create effects that no individual could achieve alone. The psychic disciplines employed by the Grey Knights are collectively known as the sanctic powers, as drawn from the realm of divination and light rather than from the darker corners of the warp. These powers are specifically designed to combat demonic entities, to strengthen allies, and to create zones of reality stabilization that make it harder for demons to maintain their manifestation in the material universe. Perhaps the most fundamental aspect of Grey Knight's psychic warfare is the Aegis, a protective field that manifests around each warrior. This is not a consciously activated power, but rather a constant psychic effect that occurs naturally in the presence of Grey Knights. The Aegis helps protect against mortal wounds caused by psychic attacks, warp phenomena, and demonic abilities. When a demon attempts to strike at a Grey Knight's soul directly, the Aegis acts as armor for the spirit, it turning aside attacks that would shatter the minds of lesser beings. The Grey Knights have developed a unique tactical concept called the Tides of the Warp, a synchronized shifting of psychic focus that affects the entire strike force simultaneously. At any given moment during battle, the Grey Knights attune themselves to one of several possible tides, each providing different benefits. The Tide of Shadows makes the warriors harder to target at range, wreathing them in psychic obscurement that confounds enemy targeting systems. The Tide of Convergence enhances the range of their psi weapons, while making their nemesis weapons even more lethal. The Tide of Celerity increases their speed, allowing them to advance and charge with supernatural swiftness. As the Tide of Escalation allows their most powerful psychic abilities to be used repeatedly without diminishing returns. And the Tide of Banishment specifically enhances their effectiveness against demonic foes, making it even harder for creatures of the warp to maintain their presence in reality. What makes the tides truly powerful is that they can be changed mid-battle through the use of specialized psychic techniques. A Grey Knight strike force might begin an engagement attuned to the Tide of Shadows to approach undercover, switch to the Tide of Convergence as they open fire, then transition to the Tide of Celerity as they charge into melee. This tactical flexibility, combined with their ability to act with perfect coordination through psychic communion, makes Grey Knight's strike forces incredibly adaptable on the battlefield. Individual Grey Knights can manifest a variety of specific psychic powers beyond the passive benefits of the tides. Gate of Infinity is perhaps the most tactically valuable, allowing a psyker to teleport a unit of warriors across the battlefield in the blink of an eye. This power enables the Grey Knights to respond instantly to changing battlefield conditions, withdrawing units from danger or repositioning them to exploit enemy weaknesses. A force of Grey Knights making full use of Gate of Infinity can seem to be everywhere at once, appearing where they are needed most and vanishing from positions that have become untenable. Hammerhand is a blessing that increases the physical strength of all warriors in a unit, allowing them to strike with supernatural force. When combined with the already considerable might of power-armored Space Marines wielding force weapons, Hammerhand can make a Grey Knight squad capable of tearing through armor that would normally require anti-tank weapons to penetrate. Vehicles crushed, fortifications shattered, monstrous creatures broken, all fall before Grey Knights empowered by Hammerhand. Sanctuary is a defensive power that creates an intense protective field around a target, granting them greatly improved invulnerable saves against all forms of attack. When cast upon a Grand Master or other critical character, Sanctuary can make them nearly impossible to kill, able to wade through fire that would obliterate entire squads of ordinary soldiers. As the shimmer of Sanctuary's protective field is often the last thing a demon sees before a nemesis blade ends its manifestation. Purge Soul is an offensive power that reaches into the very essence of an enemy, attempting to wrench their soul from their body, or, in the case of demons, to forcibly banish them back to the warp. The targeted enemy must pit their willpower directly against the Grey Knight's psychic might, a contest that demons rarely win given the purity and strength of their opponents. Astral Aim is a power that allows Grey Knights to ignore cover and even fire through solid walls. Their psychically guided shots, finding enemies no matter where they hide. Combined with the devastating firepower of psi cannons and silencers, this makes it nearly impossible for enemies to find safety behind fortifications or within buildings. Vortex of Doom creates a miniature warp rift at a designated point, pulling enemies into the Imperium with irresistible force. This is an incredibly dangerous power to use, for creating even a small breach in reality always carries risks. But when properly controlled, it can devastate enemy formations and banish entire groups of demons with a single manifestation. The Brotherhood-specific powers add even more variety to the Grey Knight's psychic arsenal. Each of the 8 Brotherhoods has developed unique techniques over the centuries, powers that reflect their particular specialization and tactical doctrine. The Wardmakers might employ powers that strengthen psychic defenses or disrupt enemy psychers, but the Preservers might use abilities that enhance their already formidable durability. The Prescient Brethren call upon foresight to improve their accuracy and avoid danger. What makes Grey Knight's psychic powers truly devastating is not their individual potency, but how they combine and amplify each other when used in concert. A squad of Grey Knights might have one warrior casting Hammerhand to increase their strength, another maintaining Sanctuary on their Justicar squad leader, a third using Astral Aim to guide their fire, all while the entire force benefits from whichever tide of the warp is currently dominant. This layering of psychic effects creates a force multiplier that makes Grey Knights far more effective than their numbers would suggest. The psychic communion that allows Grey Knights to coordinate so perfectly is itself a form of warfare. By linking their minds, they can share tactical information instantaneously, react to threats with perfect timing, and execute complex maneuvers that would be impossible for warriors relying on verbal communication. A Grey Knight strike force fights less like a collection of individuals and more like a single organism with many bodies, each part aware of what all others are doing and adjusting their actions accordingly. Against demonic foes, the Grey Knights employ specialized techniques of banishment that go beyond their standard psychic abilities. They know the true names of countless demons, knowledge carefully preserved in the Librarium Demonica and committed to memory by the chapter's librarians. As speaking a demon's true name gives power over it, allows the Grey Knight to command it back to the warp, to bind it in place, or to unmake its essence entirely. The Daemon Prince who has ravaged a dozen worlds, who commands legions of lesser demons, who believes itself invincible, finds its power stripped away when a Grey Knight speaks the syllables of its true name with absolute conviction. The chapter's most powerful psychers, warriors like Supreme Grandmaster Kaldor Drygo and Grandmaster Voldus, can manifest multiple psychic abilities in a single battle with ease. These champions combine centuries of experience with natural talent and the accumulated knowledge of the chapter to create psychic effects that border on the miraculous. They can create zones of absolute reality where demonic manifestation becomes impossible. Yet they can channel so much power through their weapons that a single strike can slay even a greater demon. They can perceive the strands of fate and adjust their tactics to ensure victory before the battle even begins. The psychic might of the Grey Knights is both their greatest strength and what makes each individual warrior so valuable. Training a psyker to such levels of mastery takes decades, even with the accelerated learning techniques available to Space Marines. The gene seed that grants them this power is irreplaceable, derived from the Emperor himself. And the knowledge required to use these abilities safely and effectively represents 10,000 years of accumulated wisdom. And a single fallen Grey Knight would represent not just the loss of a powerful warrior, but the potential compromise of techniques and knowledge that the forces of chaos would eagerly exploit. Yet despite these dangers, the Grey Knights embrace their psychic nature completely. They understand that to fight demons, one must be willing to use the same energies that give demons form. They have walked the narrow path between mastery and corruption for 10 millennia, and they have never faltered. Their psychic abilities, combined with their tactical brilliance, their superior equipment, and their absolute refusal to accept defeat, make them the Imperium's most effective weapon against the demonic threat. When reality itself is under assault, when the warp threatens to swallow entire worlds, the psychic might of the Grey Knights is all that stands between humanity and damnation. The true measure of any military force lies not in theory or training, but in the battles they have won and the enemies they have vanquished. By this standard, the Grey Knights have proven themselves beyond any doubt as one of the Imperium's most formidable assets. Their history is written in the banishment of Daemon princes, the cleansing of corrupted worlds, and the salvation of populations who never even knew they were in danger. Yet of all their many victories, some battles stand out as legendary demonstrations of their capabilities. The First War for Armageddon remains one of the most famous Grey Knights campaigns, though it is also one of the Imperium's darkest secrets. In the year 444 of the 41st millennium, the demon primarch, Angron, blessed by the blood god Khorne and filled with mindless fury, emerged from the warp at the head of a massive invasion force. His arrival aboard the space hulk Devourer of Stars heralded catastrophe for the hive world of Armageddon, a planet whose manufactories and population made it vital to the Imperium's war effort. Angron had spent centuries gathering his forces, reunifying the shattered World Eaters' Legion under his bloody banner. When he finally struck at Armageddon, he came with legions of demonic entities, corrupted space marines who had once been his sons, and hordes of mortal followers driven mad by exposure to chaos. The initial assault was devastating. Cultists who had infiltrated the planet's population rose up in coordinated attacks. The warp storm that accompanied Angron's arrival made reinforcement and communication nearly impossible. The defenders of Armageddon found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Unknown to the forces of chaos, Logan Grimnar and his great company of space wolves had been assigned to this sector of the Imperium. When the invasion began, Grimnar moved with characteristic aggression to reinforce the defenders. His presence rallied the terrified soldiers of the Astra Militarum. His tactical genius organized a coherent defense, and his warriors' ferocity bought precious time for the Imperium to respond to this catastrophic threat. The Space Wolves fought brilliantly, conducting a series of ambushes and counterattacks that inflicted heavy casualties on the traitor forces. At the River Charon, a Grimnar led an armored assault straight into the heart of the World Eaters' horde, a suicide charge that somehow succeeded in drawing the enemy into a carefully prepared trap. The enraged World Eaters pursued the withdrawing Space Wolves into the jungle, where combined forces of Grimnar's warriors and the Steel Legion of Armageddon slaughtered them in a brutal engagement that turned the river red with blood. But in the west, along the river Styx, the Imperial defense began to crumble. Angron himself led the assault, accompanied by the Cruor Praetoria, his bodyguard of 12 bloodthirsters, each a greater demon of terrible power. The Daemon Primarch smashed through the Imperial lines with contemptuous ease, his black blade reaping a harvest of souls as he advanced toward the planet's major hive cities. At the Imperial Guard and Space Wolves, forces desperately held the line, buying time at tremendous cost. It was now that the Imperium unleashed its secret weapon. 109 Grey Knights in tactical dreadnought armor teleported directly into the center of the demon horde, materializing in flashes of silver light mere meters from Angron himself. At the same time, the Space Wolves launched a massive counterattack, striking at the flanks of the demon army to prevent them from overwhelming the Grey Knights through sheer numbers. The battle that followed tested the Grey Knights as they had rarely been tested before. Angron was a Primarch, one of the Emperor's own sons, enhanced by demonic power to levels that defied mortal comprehension. His black blade had been forged in the warp itself and was said to be unbreakable. As the bloodthirsters that guarded him were each capable of slaughtering entire companies of ordinary space marines. Against this concentration of demonic might, the Grey Knights advanced with grim determination. Initially, the casualties were horrific. Angron's first swing of his black blade killed 5 Grey Knights in Terminator armor, their blessed plate and psychic defenses insufficient against the raw power of a demon Primarch. The bloodthirsters carved through the Grey Knights' formations, their axes and swords leaving trails of silver armor and spilled blood. For a moment, it seemed the Grey Knights might be annihilated despite their skill and courage. Then a young Grey Knight named Hyperion, recently ascended to the rank of full battle brother, achieved something that changed the course of the battle. Through a supreme effort of psychic will, channeling power that threatened to burn out his mind, Hyperion shattered Angron's black blade. The weapon that had killed countless heroes, that had been forged by the dark powers themselves, broke under the assault of a Grey Knight's psychic might. Angron bellowed in rage and pain, and for the first time in the battle, the Grey Knights saw an opening. Brother Captain Taramar Aurelian, leader of the Grey Knights task force, seized this opportunity with both hands. Even as Angron raged and struck out with his bare fists, even as the bloodthirsters pressed their attack with renewed fury, Aurelian advanced. He spoke the words of banishment, the true name of Angron ringing out across the battlefield with absolute authority. The demon Primarch, weakened by the loss of his blade and confronted by the combined psychic might of the surviving Grey Knights, was forcibly banished back to the warp. The ritual of banishment cost Aurelius his life. The psychic energies required to send a demon Primarch back to the Imperium burned through his body, consuming him even as he completed the ritual. But his sacrifice was not in vain. With their leader banished for 100 years and a day, with their Primarch torn from their midst, the demon army began to falter. The combined Imperial forces, sensing victory, pressed their attack with renewed vigor. Of the 109 Grey Knights who teleported into battle that day, only 13 survived. The rest fell to the blades of bloodthirsters, to the fury of Angron before his banishment, or to the countless lesser demons that sought to prevent the ritual of banishment. Yet these 13 survivors, battered and bloodied, had achieved the impossible. They had banished a demon Primarch. They had broken the back of a demonic invasion that threatened an entire sector. They had proven that even the mightiest servants of chaos could be defeated by warriors of sufficient purity and courage. The aftermath of the First War for Armageddon was as tragic as the battle itself. The Inquisition, following protocols designed to contain knowledge of chaos, ordered the sterilization and eventual execution of all Imperial Guard forces that had fought in the war. Billions of loyal soldiers who had defended their world with courage and determination were deemed too contaminated by exposure to chaos to be allowed to live. The population of Armageddon was either mind-wiped or killed and replaced with colonists from other worlds who knew nothing of what had transpired. Even the Space Wolves, who as Space Marines should have been immune to such treatment, found the Inquisition attempting to mind-wipe them to remove all memory of the Grey Knights' intervention. Logan Grimnar was furious at this betrayal of the men and women who had fought so bravely. He attempted to have his fleet escort ships of survivors away from the Inquisition's purges, but Grey Knight strike cruisers intercepted them and prevented their escape. To this day, Grimnar has never forgiven the Inquisition for what he sees as a monstrous injustice against honorable warriors. Yet from the Grey Knight's perspective, these harsh measures were necessary. On the fewer people who knew of their existence, the less the forces of chaos could learn about their methods and weaknesses. The knowledge that a demon Primarch could be defeated might seem like a victory to celebrate. But to the Grey Knights, it was simply another secret that had to be protected at all costs. The First War for Armageddon was not the last time the Grey Knights would face Angron. The demon Primarch has returned multiple times over the millennia, and each time the Grey Knights have been called upon to banish him once more. In recent conflicts during the Age of the Dark Imperium, Grandmaster Rothweir Morvans led Grey Knights' forces to Armageddon once again to counter Angron's return during the Season of Blood. At tremendous cost, including Morvans's own life, the Grey Knights succeeded in sealing the Red Angel's Gate. As the warp portal through which Angron had manifested, and banishing the demon Primarch once more. Other battles showcase different aspects of Grey Knight's capabilities. During the Siege of Villithara, a shrine world corrupted from within by a Khornate cult, Grey Knights demonstrated their mastery of urban warfare and siege operations. Their ability to remain pure even when surrounded by corruption, to maintain tactical discipline in the face of horrors that would shatter ordinary minds, proved decisive in cleansing the planet. Against the Space Hulk, designated as Harbinger of Sorrow, a massive conglomeration of ships fused together by warp energies and infested with demons, Grey Knights' boarding parties fought room by room through corridors where reality itself was unstable. They encountered creatures that existed partially outside normal time, demons that could manifest in multiple places simultaneously, and corrupted former Astartes, who had been transformed into living weapons by long exposure to the warp. Yet the Grey Knights adapted to each new horror, their psychic abilities allowing them to perceive and counter threats that would be invisible to normal warriors. The battles against the demon Prince Makar, fought across multiple worlds and spanning centuries, showcased the Grey Knight's persistence and long-term strategic thinking. Each time Makar manifested in the material universe, the Grey Knights drove him back, banishing him repeatedly until the demon prince developed a pathological hatred for the chapter. This hatred became a weakness that the Grey Knights exploited, using Makar's predictable rage to lure him into traps and ensure his banishments became increasingly difficult to reverse. During the months of shame, when radical inquisitors and Grey Knights clashed with the Space Wolves over the treatment of civilians exposed to demonic taint, the Grey Knights demonstrated that their combat effectiveness extended beyond fighting demons. Though both sides pulled back before the conflict escalated to all-out war, the Grey Knights proved they could hold their own even against the ferocious warriors of Fenris. Against tyrannid hive fleets, where demonic entities sometimes manifest drawn by the psychic disruption of the shadow in the warp, Grey Knights have conducted joint operations with other Imperial forces. And their psychic abilities allow them to function even when the tyrannid's psychic presence disrupts normal astropathic communication, and their weapons prove effective against bio-horrors that resist conventional arms. Each of these battles, and countless others recorded only in the sealed archives of the Ordo Malleus, demonstrate that the Grey Knights are far more than specialized demon hunters who would be helpless against conventional foes. They are Space Marines enhanced beyond the capabilities of most chapters, armed with the finest weapons the Imperium can provide, and led by warriors whose tactical brilliance is matched only by their absolute commitment to victory. When they fight, they win, not through overwhelming numbers, but through superior skill, better equipment, perfect coordination, and a willingness to pay whatever price victory demands. The cost of these victories should not be understated. The Grey Knights suffer casualties in every major engagement, and replacing fallen warriors takes years of recruitment and training. But they accept these losses as the necessary price of their duty. Better that 100 Grey Knights die than a single demon prince be allowed to corrupt an entire world. Better that an entire brotherhood be lost than a greater demon establish a permanent foothold in reality. The calculus of their warfare is harsh, but in a galaxy where the very survival of humanity hangs by a thread, such harshness is not cruelty, but necessity. Within the ranks of the Grey Knights stand warriors whose deeds have transcended mere military accomplishment to become legend, even among a chapter of legends. But these champions represent the absolute pinnacle of what a Grey Knight can become, combining centuries of experience with natural talent, peerless skill, and an unshakable dedication to their sacred duty. Supreme Grandmaster Kaldor Drygo stands as perhaps the most famous and controversial figure in the chapter's long history. His legend is so extraordinary, his achievements so far beyond what should be possible, that some question whether the stories told about him can possibly be true. Yet the Grey Knights themselves insist that every word is accurate, that Drygo has indeed accomplished feats that border on the miraculous. Drygo's story began in the Third Brotherhood, where he quickly rose through the ranks by demonstrating exceptional prowess against demonic entities. His first great deed came when he slew the demon Prince Makar in single combat, a victory that earned him the rank of Justicar. Makar, in his dying moment, cursed Drygo, declaring that if he ever returned to the world of Acrolem, he would walk with damnation for 10,000 years. For 200 years, Drygo continued to fight against the servants of chaos, his legend growing with each victory. He became a brother captain, then a Grand Master, eventually rising to the position of Supreme Grand Master of the entire chapter. But fate, or perhaps Makar's curse, brought him back to Acrolem to face the Demon Prince once more. The battle was titanic. Drygo and Makar fought at the edge of a warp rift, reality itself warping around them as their combat raged. Makar shattered Drygo's nemesis sword, believing victory was at hand. But Drygo refused to yield. Using the broken blade and his own psychic might, he managed to carve Makar's true name into the daemon's heart before being dragged into the warp by the curse Makar had laid upon him. What followed defies all normal understanding. Drygo did not die when he entered the warp. He did not go mad. He did not become corrupted by the infinite horrors that dwell in that realm of nightmares. Instead, he has wandered the Imperium for what, by material universe time, has been centuries. He appears periodically in the material universe, manifesting for brief periods to fight alongside his brothers before being dragged back into the warp once more. During his time in the warp, Drygo has achieved impossible things. He carved the name of his former Grand Master into the armor of a demon primarch. He shattered a black stone designated for Khorne's throne. He has walked through gardens of Nurgle, fought in the pleasure palaces of Slaanesh, and defied Zayencha's plots with contemptuous ease. The fact that he remains uncorrupted despite centuries of exposure to pure chaos is itself a testament to the Grey Knight's selection and training methods. When Drygo manifests in reality, he fights with a fury and skill that few can match. His nemesis Force Sword, the Titan Zord, blazes with such psychic power that it can cleave through the thickest armor or the most powerful demonic essence. His arrival often heralds victory, for no demon can stand before the Supreme Grand Master's wrath and survive. Grand Master Aldrich Voldus represents a different kind of Grey Knight's champion, one whose power comes from mastery of the psychic arts, rather than impossible journeys through the warp. Voldus is considered one of the most potent psykers in the chapter's history, capable of manifesting 3 psychic powers in a single psychic phase with near-perfect reliability. His psychic might is so great that he can reshape the battlefield through force of will alone. Voldus rose to command of the Third Brotherhood, a position that some believe to be cursed after the previous Grand Master was slain by the demon prince Makachin. Where others might have been intimidated by this legacy, Voldus embraced it. He studied the tactics Makachin employed, learned the demon prince's weaknesses, and when the creature next manifested, Voldus was ready. The battle that followed showcased Voldus's tactical brilliance and psychic mastery, as ultimately resulting in Makachin's banishment. During the Gathering Storm and the return of Rabot Guilliman, Voldus was selected to accompany the Primarch, representing the Grey Knights in the desperate battles to save the Imperium from falling into complete darkness. His presence proved decisive in multiple engagements, his psychic abilities countering demonic threats, while Guilliman's strategic genius coordinated the broader war effort. Voldus wields the Malleus Argyrum, a nemesis demon hammer of legendary power. Each strike from this weapon can pulverize armor and shatter demonic essences with equal ease. Combined with his psychic abilities, which allow him to strengthen allies, weaken enemies, and reshape the battlefield to his advantage, Voldus represents the Grey Knight's ideal of the warrior mystic, equally deadly with blade and mind. Castellan Garin Crow holds perhaps the most difficult position in the entire chapter. As Brotherhood champion of the Purifier Order and holder of the title Castellan, Crow is responsible for safeguarding the Black Blade of Antwyr, a demon weapon of immense power that cannot be destroyed. The sword is so profoundly evil that simply keeping it locked away would likely lead to the corruption of its guardians. Therefore, it was given to the Purifier's most incorruptible warrior to wield. Crow does not use the blade in the traditional sense. He carries it, keeps it from falling into the wrong hands, and occasionally employs it in battle. But he is in constant psychic combat, with the demon bound within the weapon. The entity trapped in the blade whispers constantly, offering power, promising glory, and tempting Crow with everything he might achieve if he would just give in and let the demon's power flow freely. For decades, Crow has resisted these whispers. He has fought countless battles while simultaneously maintaining perfect mental discipline to prevent the blade from corrupting him. His purity is so absolute, his resistance to temptation so complete, that the demon bound in the blade has begun to weaken from the constant exposure to Crow's incorruptible soul. Some whisper that if Crow maintains his vigil long enough, the demon itself might be purified, though such a thing has never occurred in recorded history. In combat, Crow is a whirlwind of destruction. Even without calling upon the demon blade's power, he is a peerless swordsman whose skill with conventional weapons makes him deadly beyond measure. But when he does allow himself to channel the blade's power against demonic foes, directing it back against the very entities it was created to serve, the results are devastating. Among the chapter's history stand other heroes whose names are remembered with reverence. Brother Captain Aurelius, who gave his life to banish Angron during the First War for Armageddon. Hyperion, whose psychic might shattered the demon Primarch's blade. Grandmaster Mandulis, who died 1,000 years ago, but whose wisdom is still studied by the chapter's leaders. Brother Ancient Gareth, who served for 4 centuries before finally being granted the rest he deserved. Each of these champions, and countless others whose deeds are recorded in the sealed archives of Titan, demonstrate what a Grey Knight can become when talent, training, experience, and absolute dedication to duty combine. They are living proof that humanity, even in this darkest of ages, can produce warriors capable of standing against the worst the universe has to offer. Yet even these legendary figures acknowledge that they do not fight alone. A Grey Knight champion, no matter how skilled or powerful, is most effective when fighting alongside his brothers. The psychic communion that links all Grey Knights, the coordination that comes from shared purpose and synchronized thought, multiplies the effectiveness of even the greatest individual warrior. Drygo, Voldus, Crow, all of them fight not for personal glory, but as part of the greater whole, their individual brilliance amplified by the strength of the chapter around them. When evaluating the power of the Grey Knights, we must consider not just their legendary champions, but the collective might of the entire chapter. Each element of their strength builds upon the others, creating a force that is far more than the sum of its parts. Their combat capabilities span every aspect of warfare, from ranged combat to melee, from tactical flexibility to strategic deployment, from individual skill to coordinated strikes. In ranged combat, Grey Knights possess firepower that can devastate enemy formations before they can close to melee range. Every warrior carries a Stormbolter, allowing even basic strike squads to lay down a withering barrage of blessed bolt rounds. When these Stormbolters are combined with specialized weapons like psy-cannons and silencers, the result is a wall of fire that can shred infantry, suppress enemy psychers, and even damage light vehicles. The psy-cannon deserves special mention as one of the most effective weapons in the Imperium's arsenal. Its psychically augmented rounds can penetrate the thickest armor while simultaneously disrupting the warp essence of demonic targets. A squad of Grey Knights Terminators, armed with psy-cannons, can lay down such a devastating volume of fire that even heavy tanks must respect their presence. Against demonic entities, psy-cannons are even more effective, each hit unraveling the bindings that keep demons manifested in reality. Yet the Grey Knights do not rely solely on firepower. Their true strength becomes apparent in melee combat, where their nemesis force weapons and psychically enhanced abilities make them among the most deadly close-quarters fighters in the galaxy. And a Grey Knight Strike Squad charging into combat is not simply 5 or 10 Space Marines with swords. They are a synchronized formation of psychic warriors whose blades burn with warp fire, and whose every strike is guided by precognition and enhanced by supernatural strength. The chapter's ability to teleport directly into combat gives them a tactical flexibility that few other forces can match. Where other armies must advance across the battlefield, exposing themselves to enemy fire and potentially being delayed by terrain or defensive positions, Grey Knights can simply appear where they are needed most. A strike force might deploy in reserve, waiting for the perfect moment to manifest, then teleport behind enemy lines to strike at command elements, psychic null zones, or critical objectives. This teleportation warfare is enhanced by their psychic abilities, particularly Gate of Infinity, which allows them to reposition even after initial deployment. An enemy commander might think they have the Grey Knights pinned down or surrounded, only to watch in horror as the silver-armored warriors vanish and reappear in a completely different location, ready to strike where they are least expected. The Grey Knights' perfect record against corruption represents perhaps their most important strength when fighting demonic entities. Other Space Marine chapters, no matter how brave or skilled, must always worry about the possibility of corruption when fighting chaos. A warrior who falls to corruption becomes a weapon for the enemy, potentially revealing strategic information or turning on his former brothers at the worst possible moment. But the Grey Knights are immune to this concern. 10,000 years of history prove beyond any doubt that they cannot be corrupted, cannot be turned, cannot be tempted by anything chaos has to offer. This immunity extends beyond simple mental fortitude. The wards etched into their armor, the psychic conditioning that defines their training, the gene seed derived from the Emperor himself, all combine to make corruption literally impossible for a Grey Knight. Demons that normally fight as much through temptation and psychological warfare as through physical violence find these tactics completely ineffective against the Grey Knights. There is no point trying to corrupt the incorruptible, no advantage to be gained from attempting to turn warriors whose very nature makes them anathema to chaos. The specialized equipment available to the Grey Knights further enhances their effectiveness. Nemesis Dreadknights allow them to engage the largest demonic entities on equal footing, providing the muscle needed to physically grapple with greater demons and demon primarchs. The chapter's fleet assets ensure they can respond to threats across the galaxy without delay. Their access to the finest weapons and armor the Mechanicus can produce means they never enter battle at an equipment disadvantage. Tactically, Grey Knights demonstrate remarkable flexibility. They can fight as a mechanized force, mounted in rhinos and land raiders that allow them to control the pace of engagement. They can deploy as an elite infantry force, using teleportation to strike where needed. Yet they can provide fire support through purgation squads armed with heavy weapons. They can infiltrate using psychic concealment. They can adapt their tactics mid-battle based on changing circumstances, their psychic communion allowing instant coordination that verbal orders could never achieve. The presence of powerful psychers in every squad means the Grey Knights can counter enemy psychic abilities with unusual effectiveness. Where other armies might have a single librarian attempting to deny multiple enemy psychers, Grey Knights can have every squad contributing to psychic defense while simultaneously maintaining their offensive capabilities. This makes them particularly effective against armies that rely heavily on psychic powers, as the Grey Knights can essentially nullify that advantage through superior numbers of psychers. Against demonic entities specifically, the Grey Knights' effectiveness borders on the absurd. They possess weapons specifically designed to harm demons. They know the true names that give power over demonic entities. Their psychic abilities include specialized banishment rituals. Their very presence makes it harder for demons to maintain manifestation in reality. A demon that might rampage unchecked through ordinary defenders finds itself fighting for survival when faced with even a small force of Grey Knights. The chapter's tactical doctrine emphasizes surgical strikes over protracted campaigns. They are not designed to hold territory or conduct lengthy wars of attrition. Instead, they strike with overwhelming force at critical points, banish the demonic threat, and then withdraw to respond to the next crisis. Yet this approach maximizes the impact of their limited numbers while playing to their strengths of mobility, hitting power, and specialized capabilities. Their training ensures that every Grey Knight is competent in all aspects of warfare. Unlike some chapters where specialization means warriors become experts in one area at the expense of others, Grey Knights are expected to master everything. A purifier must be able to use heavy weapons as effectively as he wields his nemesis halberd. A paladin must be able to teleport into combat with the same precision he employs when providing covering fire. This universal competence means that Grey Knight's forces can adapt to unexpected situations without being hamstrung by lack of specialized troops. The psychic communion that links all Grey Knights in a strike force cannot be overstated as a force multiplier. When warriors can share thoughts, coordinate actions without verbal communication, sense what their brothers need without being told, the result is a level of tactical coordination that appears almost supernatural to outside observers. Grey Knights don't need to waste time with radio communications or hand signals. They think and act as one, their individual decisions informed by the collective awareness of the entire force. This combination of strengths, superior equipment, perfect psychic coordination, specialized anti-demon capabilities, tactical flexibility, teleportation warfare, immunity to corruption, and universal competence makes the Grey Knights devastatingly effective despite their small numbers. A force of 50 Grey Knights can accomplish what might require 500 ordinary Space Marines, not because each individual Grey Knight is 10 times as powerful as a regular Astartes, but because the synergies between their various capabilities create effects that multiply their effectiveness beyond simple arithmetic. Yet even with all these strengths, the Grey Knights are not invincible. Understanding their limitations is as important as recognizing their capabilities, for it is in these limitations that we find the true measure of what they are and what they can accomplish. The most obvious limitation facing the Grey Knights is their numbers. With fewer than 1,000 battle brothers in total, spread across the entire galaxy, the chapter is stretched impossibly thin. There are millions of worlds in the Imperium, countless potential sites for demonic incursion, infinite places where the veil between reality and the warp might tear. The Grey Knights cannot be everywhere at once. They cannot respond to every threat. They must prioritize, choosing which battles to fight and which worlds to defend, while accepting that other locations will fall before they can intervene. This numerical limitation means that the Grey Knights operate under constant triage protocols. The prognosticars in the Augurium work ceaselessly to identify threats, ranking them by severity and likelihood. Grand Masters make agonizing decisions about force deployment, knowing that sending warriors to one crisis means leaving another area vulnerable. Each battle won might mean 2 others are lost, simply because insufficient forces were available to respond. The chapter's small size also makes every casualty devastating. When an ordinary Space Marine chapter loses a battle brother, it is tragic, but not catastrophic. They have hundreds of other warriors and can recruit and train replacements relatively quickly. When the Grey Knights lose a warrior, they lose one of fewer than 1,000 individuals in the entire galaxy who can fulfill their specialized role. Replacing a fallen Grey Knight takes years, sometimes decades, given the difficulty of finding suitable recruits with both psychic potential and the necessary strength of character. Major battles like the First War for Armageddon, where 96 Grey Knights fell in a single engagement, represent catastrophic losses that take generations to recover from. The 13 survivors of that battle became legendary, not just for their victory, but because they represented a significant fraction of the chapter's entire strength. When an entire brotherhood takes heavy casualties, the chapter's ability to respond to future threats is compromised for years to come. The Grey Knight's highly specialized nature, while a strength against demonic threats, becomes a weakness when facing conventional enemies. They are designed and trained specifically to fight demons, and while they are certainly capable of defeating mortal foes, other Space Marine chapters can do so more efficiently. deploying Grey Knights against an Greenskin horde or Tyrannid swarm, when regular Space Marines would suffice, wastes their unique capabilities and leaves demonic incursions elsewhere potentially undefended. This specialization extends to their tactics and equipment. The psychically augmented weapons that are so effective against demons provide less advantage against conventional targets. The rituals of banishment that can send greater demons screaming back to the warp are useless against enemies without warp essence. The wards that protect against corruption and psychic attack offer limited benefit against purely physical threats. The secrecy that surrounds the Grey Knights, while necessary for preventing chaos from learning their methods, creates operational challenges. They cannot openly coordinate with other Imperial forces, cannot request support through normal channels, cannot leverage the full might of the Imperium, because doing so would reveal their existence. This isolation means the Grey Knights often fight alone, even when the situation might call for combined arms operations or larger-scale military deployment. The same secrecy creates political difficulties. Other Imperial commanders, unaware of the demonic threat or the Grey Knight's role in countering it, sometimes resent their intervention. Resources are diverted, military operations are disrupted, entire campaigns are put on hold, while the Grey Knights conduct their mysterious operations. The aftermath of Grey Knight's intervention, with mind-wiping and executions to preserve secrecy, has created lasting resentment among other Imperial organizations, particularly the Space Wolves, who have never forgiven the events following the First War for Armageddon. The chapter's dependence on the Inquisition creates a potential vulnerability. While the Grey Knights are technically independent, operating as the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus means their deployments are often directed by Inquisitors. Inquisitors vary wildly in competence, wisdom, and sanity. A foolish or corrupt Inquisitor could theoretically order Grey Knights into situations where their specialized capabilities are wasted or where they face unnecessary danger. The chapter must balance their duty to serve the Ordo Malleus against their judgment about the best use of their limited strength. Psychically, while the Grey Knights are far more powerful than most other warriors, they face enemies who can match or exceed their capabilities. Greater demons are entities of immense psychic might who have existed since before humanity reached the stars. The demon primarchs combine the psychic potential of their original forms with the power granted by their patron gods. Against such foes, even a Grey Knight's formidable psychic abilities might prove insufficient, requiring careful preparation, superior tactics, and often significant sacrifice to achieve victory. The universal psychic nature of the Grey Knights, while generally a strength, creates a potential vulnerability against enemies specifically designed to counter psychers. The Sisters of Silence, with their soul-crushing aura that nullifies psychic powers, represent a direct counter to Grey Knight's tactics. Certain Xenos races possess technology or abilities that can suppress or disrupt psychic activity, reducing Grey Knights to merely very skilled Space Marines rather than the psychic warriors they are meant to be. Logistically, maintaining the chapter's capabilities requires extensive resources. The specialized equipment they use is difficult and time-consuming to produce. The gene seed derived from the Emperor cannot be replaced or replicated if lost. The training facilities on Titan, the fleet assets, the forge world of Deimos, all require constant maintenance and resource investment. Any disruption to these supply chains could severely compromise the chapter's effectiveness. The psychological toll of their duty, while rarely acknowledged, cannot be ignored. Grey Knights witness horrors that would break ordinary minds. They fight endlessly against an enemy that can never be truly defeated, only temporarily banished. They sacrifice normal human connections, spending decades or centuries in near isolation as they hunt demons across the galaxy. The toll this takes on their psyche is immense, and while their training and psychic conditioning help them cope, the burden of their duty is nevertheless crushing. Their effectiveness against demonic threats is so specialized that it creates a kind of operational tunnel vision. The chapter is so focused on fighting chaos that other threats sometimes receive insufficient attention. During the early stages of a tyrannid invasion, for example, when psychic disruption might herald something that looks like demonic activity, Grey Knights might deploy only to find themselves fighting the wrong kind of enemy. Such misdirections waste their limited time and strength. The Great Rift that now splits the galaxy in two has both helped and hindered the Grey Knights. On one hand, the massive increase in warp activity and demonic incursions means the chapter is more necessary than ever. On the other hand, the disruption to warp travel makes it harder for them to respond to threats, and the sheer scale of demonic activity means they are even more overwhelmed than usual. The Imperium Nihilus, the dark half of the galaxy cut off from the Astronomican's light, sees demonic activity the Grey Knights struggle to counter with their available forces. Replacement and recruitment challenges have become more severe in recent centuries. The Inquisition's aggressive purging of psychers, deemed potentially dangerous, has reduced the pool of recruits available to the chapter. The increased scrutiny on mutants and psychers throughout the Imperium, while necessary to prevent corruption, makes it harder to identify suitable candidates whose psychic gifts are strong enough to become Grey Knights, but who haven't already been claimed for other purposes or executed as potential threats. These limitations do not make the Grey Knights weak, but they do constrain their effectiveness in important ways. They are the Imperium's most powerful weapon against demonic incursion, but they are not a panacea for all of Chaos's threats. They are incredibly effective within their specialty, but cannot single-handedly defend humanity from all the horrors that assail it. They are paragons of purity and skill, yet they bleed and die like any other warriors when faced with sufficient opposition. Understanding these limitations is essential to appreciating the Grey Knight's true strength, which lies not in being invincible, but in achieving impossible victories despite operating under severe constraints. Every demon banished, every world saved, every incursion stopped, represents a triumph not just of martial skill, but of resourcefulness, determination, and the absolute refusal to admit defeat, no matter how overwhelming the odds. So just how strong are the Grey Knights? The question that opened this exploration demands a nuanced answer, one that acknowledges both their tremendous capabilities and their significant limitations. They are simultaneously the Imperium's most specialized and most effective force against demonic incursion, yet also a desperately overstretched chapter fighting an endless war with insufficient numbers. In terms of individual warrior quality, a single Grey Knight represents the pinnacle of what the Imperium can create. Every battle brother is a space marine, already enhanced far beyond normal human capacity. Every battle brother is a trained psyker, capable of manifesting powers that most baseline humans could never hope to wield. Every battle brother has been equipped with the finest weapons and armor available, consecrated and blessed until they become instruments of the Emperor's will made manifest. And every battle brother has proven their absolute incorruptibility through trials that would break lesser souls. Compare a Grey Knight to a regular space marine from another chapter, and the advantages become clear. The Grey Knight has psychic abilities the regular marine lacks. His weapons are specifically designed to harm enemies that might resist conventional arms, as his training includes specialized knowledge of demonic entities and how to banish them. His armor provides superior protection against the reality-warping powers that demons employ. In a one-on-one confrontation, especially against a demonic opponent, the Grey Knight would almost certainly prevail. But the strength of the Grey Knights extends beyond individual capability. Their true power lies in how they fight as a coordinated force, their psychic communion creating synergies that multiply their effectiveness. 10 Grey Knights fighting together are worth far more than 10 individuals fighting separately, for they can share awareness, coordinate their psychic powers, and execute complex tactics with perfect timing. As this force multiplication means that Grey Knight's strike forces can accomplish objectives that would require much larger formations of conventional troops. Against their primary enemy, demons and demonic entities of all kinds, the Grey Knights are without peer in the entire Imperium. No other force combines the necessary capabilities so completely. The adepta sororitas, while pure and faithful, lack the psychic abilities and specialized weapons needed to truly threaten powerful demons. Regular space marines, while deadly warriors, can be corrupted and lack the intimate knowledge of demonic nature that the Grey Knights possess. Even the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own guardians, who might match Grey Knights in individual combat prowess, lack the numbers and deployment flexibility to counter demonic incursions across the galaxy. When a demon prince manifests on an Imperial world, when a greater demon tears open a rift to the warp, when corruption threatens to consume an entire sector, the Grey Knights are the force most likely to turn back the tide. Their perfect record speaks for itself. 10,000 years without a single warrior falling to corruption, countless demons banished, worlds saved that would otherwise have been lost to chaos. This consistency of success against the most dangerous enemies the Imperium faces is itself a testament to their strength. Yet measuring their strength purely by combat capability misses important aspects of what makes them valuable. The Grey Knights are not just warriors, but scholars of the demonic, possessing knowledge that is preserved nowhere else in the Imperium. The Librarium Demonica contains secrets that, he properly applied, can prevent demonic incursions before they fully manifest. The Prognosticar's predictions allow the chapter to strike preemptively, stopping threats before they develop into full-scale catastrophes. This intelligence and knowledge aspect of their strength is as important as their combat prowess. Their symbolic value to the Imperium cannot be discounted either. The mere existence of the Grey Knights, even if most Imperial citizens never know of them, represents hope that the demonic can be fought and defeated. For the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus, who do know the chapter exists, they provide invaluable reassurance. No matter how terrible the demonic threat, there exists a force specifically designed and trained to counter it. This psychological effect, while intangible, contributes to the Imperium's ability to resist the slow grinding pressure of chaos. Comparing the Grey Knights to other specialized forces in the galaxy reveals both their advantages and limitations. Against the Necrons, ancient machines of living metal, Grey Knights would struggle. Their anti-demon weapons provide little advantage. Their psychic abilities might be disrupted by Necron technology, and their small numbers would be a serious disadvantage in prolonged engagements. Against Tyranids, where the shadow in the warp disrupts psychic abilities and sheer numbers can overwhelm even the most skilled warriors, Grey Knights would find themselves fighting at a significant disadvantage. But against Chaos, their designated enemy, they remain supreme. When Angron led a demonic invasion of Armageddon, it was Grey Knights who banished him. When the Eye of Terror vomits forth its legions of corrupted and demonic entities, it is Grey Knights who hold the line. When reality itself seems ready to tear apart under the pressure of warp incursions, it is Grey Knights who perform the rituals of stabilization and banishment. In their specialty, they are without equal. The question of how strong they are must also consider the context of the grimdark future they inhabit. In a galaxy where hope is scarce and victory often means merely surviving another day, the Grey Knights represent something rare: the ability to not just survive, but to actively push back against one of humanity's greatest threats. They don't just hold the line against chaos, they advance against it, banishing its servants and reclaiming corrupted space for the Imperium. Their strength is proven not through boasts or propaganda, but through 10 millennia of results. Every demon primarch they have faced has been banished. Every major demonic incursion they have countered has been stopped. While they have suffered casualties, sometimes devastating ones, they have never failed in their ultimate mission. This track record of success, maintained across 10,000 years against the most dangerous enemies imaginable, speaks more powerfully than any theoretical assessment of their capabilities. Yet we must also acknowledge what they cannot do. They cannot be everywhere. They cannot fight every battle. They cannot save every world threatened by chaos. Their limitations, particularly their small numbers and specialized focus, mean that for every victory they achieve, as countless other worlds fall, because the Grey Knights were not available to defend them. Their strength, while considerable, is not infinite. The true answer to how strong the Grey Knights are might be this: they are exactly as strong as they need to be to fulfill their purpose, no more and no less. They possess the capabilities required to fight demonic entities effectively. They have the numbers necessary to respond to the most critical threats, while accepting that some lesser incursions will go uncountered. They have the equipment, training, and knowledge to give them the best possible chance of success in their specialized role. For the Imperium of man, staggering through the darkness of the 41st millennium and beyond, the Grey Knights represent one of the few clear successes of the Emperor's vision. They are exactly what he intended them to be: incorruptible warriors, capable of fighting chaos on its own terms and winning. In a galaxy where so much has gone wrong, where the Emperor's grand plan has been derailed by betrayal and corruption, the Grey Knights stand as proof that some things still work as intended. They are the Daemon Hunters, the Silver Knights, the Emperor's own perfected weapons against the warp. They are Space Marines enhanced beyond the already superhuman, Psychers trained to levels of mastery rarely seen, warriors equipped with the finest arms and armor the Imperium can provide. They are few in number, but mighty in deed, scattered across the galaxy, but united in purpose, fighting an enemy that can never be truly defeated, but must always be opposed. So how strong are the Grey Knights? Strong enough to banish demon primarchs. Strong enough to hold the line when reality itself fractures. Strong enough to remain pure despite exposure to corruption that would annihilate lesser souls. Strong enough to fight on, despite knowing their war can never truly be won, only endlessly prosecuted until the last stars die. They are as strong as humanity needs them to be, and in the grim darkness of the far future, that might just be strong enough. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Grey Knights, their history, their capabilities, and their place in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There's so much more to explore in the vast lore of this incredible setting, from other Space Marine chapters to the terrifying entities they fight against. From ancient Xenos races to the desperate struggles of baseline humans trying to survive in the galaxy's darkest age. Your support helps make more content like this possible, allowing us to explore the rich tapestry of stories and factions that make Warhammer 40,000 so endlessly fascinating. Thank you for watching, and may the Emperor protect.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any, and yeah, sleep well.